All right, welcome back to another live episode of the relationship series. My name is Gina Spataro, and this is my brother Sam Spataro. Once again, talking about matters of the heart and mind. We haven't been on for a little while. We've been on hiatus. It's been a little crazy, but no excuse not to get back into it for sure. How have your weeks been, Sam?
My weeks have been quite exceptional. I have set some new 2021 goals.
Mhm.
And, in the midst of a crisis, I thought I'd be a little bit more creative in finding ways to create more wealth, investments, and so forth. So, as you know, and our audience don't, my son are very big into Pokemon, and I'm a Gary V follower.
Yeah.
And a little while ago, I was following him and listening to one of his videos, and he mentioned something about Pokemon cards. So,
Ah.
since then, I've been dabbling in and making little pivots into the market, getting to understand who Charizard is and Blastoise and all these wonderful other crazy Japanese characters. And it's been a lot of fun, actually, because now that I'm getting more educated and understanding, and I'm, following these, middle-aged men who are, just much like me. And it's like bringing out the kid again. I'm going over sports cards that our brother and I had when, we were, 10, 11, 12 that are now 30 years old. And it's quite exciting, but especially on the investment side, because, like 2, 3 months ago, I bought some Pokemon booster boxes is what they're called. And they're specific types of Pokemon cards you can get. And there's 36 packs in a box. And I paid about $450 for a box of these cards. And I thought it was crazy. And so did my wife and your boyfriend, by the way. And today I just saw that those very same boxes are going for $1,500.
Wow.
So I 200x'd my money in 60 days. So since the topic tonight is about money, here's a way where those cards that are dusty and tucked away could be a good financial opportunity. But that's one thing, the investment side. On another side, I had a little bit of a character building day today. I was meeting a client, and I had my door open slightly because I seen a car coming, and it was windy, and the wind gust was so strong it pulled my door open, and the car was coming, and I took his passenger side mirror off and scraped his whole door. My door's damaged in our brand new SUV, which has to be replaced.
Oh, okay.
But on the flip side, it could have been a lot worse. I literally, as he did that, the car door slammed back, and I just tucked my head inside. Or I could be headless right now. So
Oh my gosh.
I know, it was so crazy.
What was the other person's response?
Hey,
How did the other person react?
oh, he was pretty good. Yeah, he was pretty good. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, for me, I never placed a lot of value on material
No.
things. So for me, it's something that's replaceable, can get fixed. It sucks because it's out of pocket, but hey, I mean, we're in a time where you need to be creative and think outside of the box, and try to reach for those stars at a time where maybe you can't see them. There's a lot of people in that situation, so it'll be a cool video tonight. How about you?
Same. I've had a great couple of weeks, a lot of self-care practice, long walks, honestly have been like a lifesaver. Not only for myself, but it's just, being outside and realizing that people are still getting out is really empowering too. It's like, okay, people are still going for walks, they're engaging, which is nice. So it's nice to see and being surrounded by that, right? So yeah, and then it's funny because I was just talking to our other brother and I was getting puppy fever this week. So I've had this one little guy on my mind for a couple days now.
Who?
Well, it's
Or what is what I should say?
this little puppy named Milo.
What kind of dog is it?
He's half miniature pincher and half Chihuahua. Yeah, he's super cute, but very expensive, and I'm not willing to pay that price. So we'll see if the price comes down. But yeah, we'll see.
I don't think you're going to get that, Gina.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Our friend George just sent me a text, like literally before this broadcast,
Yeah.
And where Adam and Georgina live, our cousin in town here, a house was listed for $850, and it sold for over $1 million.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I did hear that people in like, those mom groups or like the town groups, so there's, I don't know what it is, but there's people posting where it's like they want to move into these areas and not to list the homes, but to go through them, and they will buy without conditions. Right. So I think that beats the market of, okay, so let's have a price war, right? Where it's like, come to me first, I'll pay the price. This is what I'll pay. No conditions needed. And you get your money. That's crazy. It's a crazy time.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the everything bubble. When you have interest rates that you're basically giving money away for free.
You really are.
Right. And there's all these government programs. I mean, it has to find a home somewhere, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So enjoy it.
Yeah. Did you want to kick it off tonight?
Yeah, sure. So today's broadcast was inspired by a friend of mine. Okay. And considering 2020 and now 2021 is presenting some very unique challenges. And I mean, we always go through challenges in life and in relationships especially. But I've read a statistic, and it said that about 48% of marriages that have major problems are usually due to money. Yeah. And there's so many contributing factors that can compound those sorts of things as you get into the relationships. Some of those common things can be expectations. Maybe that person coming into the relationship came from a very, posh, high caliber family, and they have very high expectations for their husband or wife to provide that same life. And that might not be something that they can deliver or desire to be. So that expectation of, that standard of living that you've had your life, and now you're bringing it into this relationship, maybe not asking the right questions, prior to getting in that deep, that can create a multitude of problems. Maybe you have also different types of personalities when it comes to money. Maybe one's a saver, maybe one's a spender. And also that dark side where, people have bad habits. Behind your back, you're checking the credit card statement that was left on the counter for the first time, and you're noticing that, that bill that should be a couple thousand is up to $8,000 to $10,000, and nobody said a word. Wow. And you're steaming and ready to lose it, and don't know how to communicate this to your partner. And I also think, especially today, in today's world where relationships have evolved so much, I believe there's still some old school traditions that are expected in a very modern type of society, which kind of conflict with the whole ground of independence and so forth, right? So I think there's a multitude of things that we can speak about, but from let's just say, I think for us, for example, especially growing up, I can think back, and I never really ever remember a time where there was a lot of stress with money, from our parents up until the late 80s, when the housing market crashed here in Toronto. Right. We had our first housing bubble back then. It was pretty bad. And I remember, interest rates went up to 18 to 20%. I can remember Dad having problems collecting money from people because, basically everybody shut off the money spout, right? Yeah. And it was a very stressful time. I mean, I can remember, them going to auction, selling machinery at like 50 to 75% discounts just to keep, food and, food on the table and just the essential necessities. And I could see there was a lot of stress going on in the house. And I remember one night getting ready to sleep, and I heard this big boom in the washroom, and like something that we never hear. And I go running in there, and I seen Dad passed out on the floor with blood coming off his head and everything. And the ambulance came. And what I believe I understood after it's happened, he was having like anxiety and panic attacks from the stress. So, I think money problems can come around in so many different ways. I mean, it's environmental. It could also be something to do with upbringing. It could have to do with some dark side, bad habits that are lurking around, and also something to do with your personality. So, since those are a few things, what are some things that you to maybe kick this off with?
I think, especially in a relationship with money, I have to agree with you 100%. And it is just factual. Money is a lot of the issues when it does come to relationships and the turmoil that it can create. But so I wrote a few things down. I just realized what you wrote underneath it. You said, say what? So I'll explain to you kind of where I was going with this. So investment versus impulsivity. So if you have polar opposites coming into this, where it's like one is very impulsive with their money, like I know people that need to spend every last penny of their paycheck, no matter what it is that they buy, but it has to be spent. Where other people, it's like they automatically take money out, it goes into their TFSAs, that goes into their RSPs, it goes into their investments, etc. Right? So if you have polar opposites coming into the relationship, and I know people like this, and it puts a lot of stress on the relationship. And another thing that happens in relationships is if there's friction somewhere else, a lot of the times people will soothe or manage those feelings is by spending. So I know a lot of women that do this. So if there's, if they're going through a dip in their relationship, they'll go out and buy a brand new car when they don't really need a new car. They'll go out and buy, all these designer brand clothes and rack up their Visa bill. And then, like you said, their spouse has to see it. And they're like, well, why did you spend all this money? Like, where do you think it's coming from? Because it's not coming from you because you can't pay the bill. And both of our names are on the statement, right? So it's getting very clear, like you said, about the expectations coming into the relationship, because there's a difference between equality and equity in this placement as well. If someone's coming in making twice as much as one of their partners, I do believe in the equity part, where it's like, okay, I'll pay the mortgage, you take care of the bills around the house. You know what I mean? Where it's not like, let's split it 50-50, even though I make this much money. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, 100%.
Yeah. So I think the mindset going into it, I don't think it should be taboo to talk about the money. And I think a lot of the time it is. There's an expectation where it's like, we'll just get into it and figure it out. I think it really has to be talked about. Like, show your finances, show where your debt lies, show where your money is going. Do you have investments? Do you have a pension? Do you have, a retirement savings? Do you have an idea of where you want to live, when you retire? Because all these things will be determined by how you play your cards in the early years of your relationship. Right? But I do know for a fact that relationships often turn out this way, where it's like the resentment of one partner because the other partner isn't able to either pull their own weight or being very foolish. And then there goes the name calling, the fights, the storming out, the doing bad behaviors, impulsivity, etc. So that's the impulsive part that I'm also talking about too. And I see it all the time. I mean, for me, I couldn't live that way. I'm the opposite, where it's like I have direct deposits into my TFSAs and like all that kind of stuff. Not to say that you can't enjoy yourself, but it has to be in a frame where it fits your lifestyle, right? And I think so many people get caught up in living with our, what's that term? Living with, no, not living with the Joneses. You know what I mean?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses. Or the Jonases, who knows?
The Jonas Brothers, maybe.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. And that's an issue too. Moving into a neighborhood that isn't affordable for you, having that expectation in a relationship where it's like, oh, one person wants to live in this neighborhood, and they expect one partner to make that stuff happen, right? And a lot of the times that partner will put everything on the line so that that expectation is met. Like, how many times do you know people doing that where it's like, I don't think we need to be in this area, but they make it happen because that's the expectation of one of their partners. Meanwhile, they're not flipping the bill for it, the majority of the bill. I see you nodding. So where do couples go? Where do they start with the money blues? Because it's going to accumulate if you don't nip it in the bud right away. Do you expose your finances before you get into the relationship or get into like a marriage status? Do you think that is an expectation? I haven't been married, so for me, I've always just done it myself and figured it out. But for you in a relationship, like, I know for me, if I lived with somebody, I wouldn't expect someone to pay everything, but I also would see the equity in it also. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what advice do you give young couples maybe possibly getting into this, or couples that are struggling? Because this is a huge one. Money is a huge one because a lot of people don't know how to save. They really don't. They really, really don't.
Well, I think really fundamentally, I mean, if you take in everything that we're talking, I mean, I heard a quote once: knowledge is potential power if it's the right knowledge. Having knowledge is not power. It's potential power if you have the right knowledge. And if you can look today, and like, this is what dumbfounds me. I mean, you go back, I don't know how many years, 30 to 50 years, and it was usually one person working in the family. The savings rate then compared to now is almost zero. Like, there's almost, like, up until the pandemic, it's the highest saving rate, I think, in like 15 or 20 years.
Wow.
But it's pretty much been abolished since, the majority of, people in relationship are working.
Yeah.
Because you have two providers with two different thoughts, with two different ideas with their money, where it was more cultivated and in sequence, and it was a lot easier, right? But I think regardless of the situation or the time frame, it really comes down to one thing, and it's always this one thing. It's literacy. It's financial literacy. Either you are learning it from home, or the majority of the time you're learning what you need to learn from school, and then you get out into the world and you fend for yourself. I mean, if you're a self-aware person and growth is very important to you, obviously you will make steps to nipping this at about an early age and find steps to becoming better at it. But for the most of us, like everything in life, we always turn a blind eye to the important things, and especially when it comes to dating, or whether it's a marriage or whatever, we kind of go from external to internal, where, I think that's the way we're wired. We're not, meeting somebody right away going to, okay, are they going to be good with money? Are they going to be good parents? Are they going to be kind? Are they honest? Are they going to be great with my family? No, are they hot? They look good? Are they going to be good in bed? All these sort of external things that intrigue us as humans from the get-go, because that's just the way we're hardwired. And then as time passes on, and you start to get comfortable and sometimes complacent, a lot of the bad habits that we have, because the experiences present the opportunities to show themselves, and then our weaknesses are exposed, either right away or in time, or maybe we're really good at hiding them, or also maybe from the flip side, maybe you're one that does notice, but you don't do anything about it out of fear or specific expectations that you may have or were taught to have in relationships, right? So it's a really tricky one, and I think regardless of what the problem is. And the problem we're talking about tonight is money. But Tony Robbins really hit it on the nose with this quote: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your communication. So since it comes to finances and you're getting into a relationship with somebody, what holds us back from asking those questions or having those hard conversations about things that either bother you or are working or that you would like to share and express without fear of backlash, betrayal, anger, resentment, and pushback, right? So I think at the core of it, you really got to nip what's driving you, and those are those beliefs that you're so unconscious of about why you are the way you are with money, what you believe about money, what role does money have in your relationship or the relationship that you're about to take on. And it's one of those things. And the statistic shows that money is the number one reason that people break up.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's one of the main ones, and it's a big one. And I can tell you right now that, my God, I'm, knock on wood, my wife and I are very fortunate. My businesses and her job were not affected by this. But could you imagine these people that were affected by this at a time where maybe you're just getting married, you just bought your new house, a new car, you're about to have your first or maybe another child, you just finished school and you've got all that debt and you're about to get your job and you just got laid off. I can't imagine those people that are in this challenge right now, not knowing what to do, not having any income coming in, or maybe not having any income in and having a ton of debt. Yeah. Right. And then that compounds into the relationship. I've watched a multitude of podcasts where people are coming on and saying, yeah, we just broke up, ended our 5-year, 10-year, 2-year relationship, marriage, whatever it is, because, she lost his job, or, we didn't have enough savings, or it's, at the end of the day, it's the stress, right? And it could either be, positive, or it could be negative. It's all the interpretation, but there's so many driving factors, and it's as easy as a fix for the amount of commitment you're willing to endure and put in to yourself and into the relationship, right? So and there's just so much, if you are in the situation, there's just so much literature and free information. YouTube is an encyclopedia Britannica to infinity today. There's countless information, but there's just too many distractions to face the hard talks, the hard changes. It's like, it's human nature, right, to not want to change until you're forced to, right? And fortunately, a lot of us are in a situation where we've had to fine tune those things when it comes to finances.
Right. And there's a lot of, so this new generation too, right? And some of the old generation, we have this instant gratification mindset where it's like, we know that if we order something, it's going to be here tomorrow, and what do? We put it on a visa, or we have pre-programmed visas on certain sites. So it just makes it so easy. And it becomes like this subconscious thing where it's like, I'll take care of it later. And then it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. And we're putting ourselves in debt because, back in the day, we used to have a layaway. Like, if anybody even knows what layaway is, where it's like, you can't buy it until you have the money. And now it's the instant gratification of, I want it, I'm going to have it, I don't need the money. Right? So it's like, oh, I want that house, I don't need the money, but I know the bank will give it to me, and I'll just deal with it.
But that's also the new social programming.
Yes, it is.
Because if you go back 40 years and you would watch the commercials or read the newspapers, it wasn't go get a credit card.
No.
Go get a high rate mortgage to get your dream home. Mm-hmm. Right? It was, you work, you saved money, and you were diligent about retirement. Where today it's just it's a completely different situation. And I think what we really have to get our hands around is the time we are today, those old fundamentals aren't going to work today.
No.
Unless we as a society completely abolish credit as we see it today. And, it's like I shared with you that house that just sold in Alliston, like, it's realistic in an unrealistic and fantasized environment.
Yeah.
Right. The banks are dictating, what sort of reality we live in today. And it's a false one on the pretense that everything will always be okay as long as you can continue to keep borrowing.
Yeah.
Right. Until that one day where you lose your job or you get sick or you have a black swan event like the coronavirus and we're in lockdowns. And then you're faced with the reality of the choices, the decisions you've made over the course of the years behind you.
So where do people go if they're finding themselves in these situations like this? And I always say, if you're not the master of a certain topic or whatnot, seek someone who is. So if, financial advisors, look at people's experiences or people's paths. If they've done the work that you aspire to do as well, ask questions, ask even people in relationships, like, how do you deal with X, Y, and Z? As a couple, how did you manage it in the early parts of your relationship? Because it's going to look different for so many people, and people will have so many different expectations going into it. So you have to make sure that you're matching or you're, congruent with those expectations. Because if you're not, it's going to create issues. If one partner's not willing to pay anything and you've said that you're going to fork the bill for everything, and then you become resentful after, you signed up for that, right?
And you know what I see a lot of the times too, it's, when people are in relationships, one thing is okay for another without any jabs. Mm-hmm. And when the other does the same thing, it's jab, jab, punch. Mm-hmm. Right. And you see it all the time where, whether it's, the husband or wife goes out and, comes home with things. Oh, hey, that's great. And then, and I'll give you an example. My wife thought I was crazy for buying these Pokemon cards. I thought I was crazy, right? And there was conversation coming afterwards. I had cards out, like, oh yeah, this Pokemon, and they spent this much money. And I'm thinking, I don't complain when you come home with a rug or stuff that I don't really care about. Why you always got to take jabs at me for, right? But now that they've gone up in value and all those sorts of things, it changes the perspective. It wasn't such a bad idea, right? But that's the whole point here. We are so brainwashed to be consumers and not investors in our lives. How many times do you know people that go out and spend $5,000-$10,000 on their home to get new appliances, furniture, maybe a new car? Oh, it's happy go time.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden you want to start to put money away. Okay, what? I think maybe instead of spending money like this every month, let's put $200 to $500 away and start putting in investments. And oh, well, what about this? Oh, well, we can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So we are conditioned. First and foremost, we have to understand why the fuck we are like this. We are conditioned to be consumers.
Yeah.
Not savers.
Right.
And investors. However, today that is changing.
Yeah.
You can go on TikTok. You can go on YouTube, and there's some 20, 30-year-old or maybe 60-year-old Ray Dalio, who is has a hedge fund that's worth $100 billion, giving free advice on Facebook, YouTube about his investment principles, right? And so, but what you need to do from the very beginning, if you want to make any change, because the majority of people watching us aren't going to do anything, right? It's just not going to happen, right? Most people don't know where to start, don't know where to begin. And like all humans in the beginning, when changes come, it fucking sucks. It feels uncomfortable. It feels hard. You don't want to take the time to do it, right? But once that habit's formed, it's not work anymore. Right. So, we enjoy the work that we want to do, not the work that we don't want to do. Right. So I think the very first thing that people can do is don't worry about downloading an app. Don't worry about going and watching YouTube channels. Sit down and just at the core of you, you got to figure out what beliefs are driving me to have these bad habits.
Yeah.
What do I fundamentally believe by racking up my credit cards or not being honest with my spouse about, what I'm doing with the money or behind their backs? What your expectations are, maybe in the relationship for yourself or that your partner has on you to be a certain type of provider. You got to get down to the core of it, of what's driving you not to make these changes or to speak up and do something positive.
I agree.
Because I think what happens is, when we get down to it, our brain just focuses on all the negative with the changes that, it almost tricks us into thinking that staying the same is the better decision. Right? So at the core of it, you got to start recognizing what beliefs have been driving you. So you can then see what you need to change. Because your beliefs create thoughts, then get this thing that was given to you called the body to take actions that specify this very results that you are going to get and create in your life. And so at the core of it, you got to start right where it hits home. And that's right inside. It's what's driving me to have these bad habits. Right. And then try to figure out where you learn them. Did you learn them at home, at school, a mentor, a grandparent? And then step back and say, where are they today? Where will I be in another year, 5 years, or 10 years if I don't make any changes?
Yeah, 100%.
Right? You have to take the time to holistically see what your life is going to look like if you continue on this path. So that's the very first thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, have fun with this and be creative. What new belief or thought can I create that can cause me to take some very key specific actions, just little simple things that could have a profound effect in my life in the future? And once your brain can see that picture, then it's easy to start mobilizing and pushing the future to take on some new things that are going to create these changes. But you can't just, I want to change and do this and that and not get down to the core of it. At the core of it's always the beliefs that are driving us to have either positive or negative impacts in our lives, and obviously in the outcomes of our lives, right? So especially when it comes to money, those are a couple key things. And today, especially, with a lot of people, like there's a lot of local restaurants still in our town that aren't open, businesses. I know people that have lost their jobs. Like, guys, I know dick about Pokemon cards and sports cards. And I just got in and, I could probably, if I sold all my stuff, make, an extra $5,000 or $10,000 in a month.
Yeah.
Right. If it's not Pokemon cards or sports cards, I have a friend's son who's 11 years old who's flipping sneakers on eBay and making $800 a month. And he's 11 years old.
That's fantastic.
So what I'm saying is, you see all these guys coming on YouTube and Facebook with these get rich quick schemes and start to Shopify. But okay, you don't have to go that far. But, there's things you can do right now to create some quick cash, whether you're buying and flipping. If that's not something you're into, then go on Kijiji or Marketplace and find people who are posting ads saying, they have company ads, and go on there and say, hey, look, I see that you're looking for work and advertising your companies on here. This is an area of interest that I'm thinking of getting. Are you hiring? Put something on Facebook. Hey guys, if you have any old sports cards or some old sneakers or something that you want to get rid of, I'm, getting into this business. I could really use your help. You have creativity is your at a time like right now, you have to allow the creativity to flow. It's like Christian, my oldest son. He wants to buy this gaming chair. He's into gaming now, gaming chair and the gaming set. And he's like, okay, I got $50 and this thing's 100. But, I can get rid of this toy box. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're gonna have to figure out a way to earn that money. And he just it's like he put a dagger in his heart, right? And I could see his physiology change. He slouched down, his arms crossed, and like this, and I'm like, right. And so as we progressed and we spoke about it, I got a piece of paper and I got him to write out, how would it make you feel if you could figure it out right now that you could get this? I'd feel happy. I'd feel amazing. I'd feel blah, 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 blah. I'm like, that's awesome. Now, what are some things that you think you can do in the next couple of days or week or 2 weeks to make that happen? And he still couldn't, well, I could get rid of this thing. I'm like, no, you need to create the money in exchange of your energy that someone's willing to pay with a product or service, right? And so we started to come up with, well, maybe I could do chores or clean the car. I'm like, now you're getting there.
Yeah.
Right. So, and after about 20 to 30 minutes, he went from feeling totally in despair, just hating the whole thing about doing it, right? Because it's just so easy to wave those dollar bills that Nundu and Nunda gave them to go and buy those, the next Pokemon in the chair, but it's not teaching them principles, right? It's not teaching them principles, and you're not teaching yourself principles by just going and borrowing money off a local family member because you're going through a struggle or getting another credit card. You have to allow your creativity to flow. You got to get outside of what you're experiencing, because when you're in the experience, you're trapped to the opportunities that are still right in front of you. You have to pull yourself out by changing your physiology and getting deep with the resourcefulness of the quality emotions that will drive you to get out of that anxiety and stress and worry and fear. So then you can see the opportunities that were always there. And so the beliefs are always what drive us either up or down. And what are your thoughts on something like this, Gina, that isn't complicated and simple, that they can literally do right now and maybe make some changes towards that?
Well, I think just like you were saying, like, and in even moments like what we're in right now with COVID, it's like you have to see where the opportunities lie. If you're playing the victim mindset, you're going to be stuck. You have to see where the opportunities lie. What are people still seeking? What are people still needing? What strengths can you offer in those areas? Because they are there. Like, I started 2 little businesses during COVID, right? Like, I have a main job, but I started these 2 little side businesses where it's like, okay, if this struggle didn't happen, I wouldn't have dug deep for these opportunities within myself, right? But like you said, creativity also can produce opportunities. You have to get that creative outlet flowing. And if your tunnel vision is on, you're not going to see the opportunities in front of you. But it's also recognizing people around you. It's recognizing your circle of influence. If there's people that are stuck and you're stuck, you might remain stuck. You might have to change that circle of influence a little bit and look to those who you aspire to be, or things that people have and you aspire to have yourself. Ask questions. How are you able to manage that? How did you start? You have to get out of your comfort zone. I think that is a huge one. Get out of your comfort zone. And especially in relationships, get out of your comfort zone with having those tough conversations. Just have them. Have them, because the right person that you will be with will have them with you and will be willing to make those changes and sacrifice to have the things that you want, and etc. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great opinion. I think, for somebody who might feel like you're trapped in a relationship, who has really bad money skills, whether they're, they love debt, they love credit, they love to just spend or are impulsive. I think a lot of us let things slide because by nature, the majority of people are pleasers.
Yes.
Right. And so you're taught, to be kind and loving and empathetic and, all those sorts of things that come from those great quality emotions. But at the same time, if you feel like, you're losing a part of yourself in the process, you also have to create a belief that as much as you love them and cherish them and you don't want to hurt them, if there's something that's hurting you, you have to see value in that.
Yeah.
You have to see value in the other person caring and listening to what you have to say and being open to some of the changes or strategies that you might have in mind to prevent these things from continuing by supporting them, because you are part of the relationship. I mean, when you join a sports team, you have one option: either accept all your players and make the best and support one another, or you bail. But today people are, bailing out of relationships like, farmers put bales like, in the fields. It's just, you know, we're in a very unique time where it's easier just not to put the work in,
Right.
right, than it is to put it in and be fully committed and, just really seeing the value in what a relationship is supposed to be for the relations, not the ship.
Yeah. 100%.
So if you are in that situation, um, you know, that would definitely be the one thing that could guide you forward, is just take a deep breath in and just focus on the value that it could bring in your life if you speak up and do this thing that deep down in your soul will help you, the other person, and your future together.
Yeah.
I just think our brain paints such an ugly picture of doing the right thing because, of those human fears of not being loved, judged, or accepted. Right. But if you can learn to flip them off, flip the switch, turn it off, and right away come back at it with some new empowering thoughts and actions, because neurons that fire together, they wire together. That's a Dr. Joe Dispenza quote. So, if you create that belief enough over and over again by trying and trying again, by going into it a good state, then eventually the changes will happen. They'll receive you in the way that is intended, and all of a sudden things will change. But we got to get away from the bullshit that the mind creates and the negativity around making these positive changes.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Not too much. I just think, here in Ontario, we know that some restrictions are lifting off. Kids are going back to school. My prediction was 2 weeks. I was off by a week. So I think last time we actually talked, our last video, I think I said that we were going to go back to school in like 2 weeks a month. But anyway, I think, I don't know. I mean, 2021 could be another interesting year. There's a lot of interesting things happening, both positive and negative, still globally around the world, and probably within your own community. And a famous quote that I heard is that stand guard at the door of your mind and shut off what you need to. If the world ever gets that bad, someone you love will call you and tell you, and just be very conscious of where you're spending your time and your energy.
That's a great mindset to end off with. And on that note, this is the relationship series. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And we always talk about the matters of the heart and mind. We will see you next time. Ciao for now.